Hey, what's going on, everybody? I can already see Brian, Stevo, Eddie, Tomas. Did I say Brian? Jennifer. A lot of familiar faces. Brett's in the house too, I believe. And yeah, so welcome to the Reliable HVACR live stream and podcast. If you can't stay for the whole show, or if you don't catch it live, you can always watch it later on YouTube. Also on podcast, wherever you listen to your podcast, it'll be uploaded soon. So today we have a very special guest. I'm pretty excited to have him on. We have none other than Mr. Veto Pro Pac himself, Roger Brouard. Let me bring him on real quick. Hey, Roger, how you doing?
Hey, good, Adrian. Thanks for teeing this up and inviting me into have on your podcast. Much appreciated.
No problem. I can't wait to get into your story and kind of like how Veto got to where it is now. I mean, everybody holds them to the highest praise of tool bags. Everybody that I know loves them. So, I have a big obsession with the Veto bags myself. And how's the weather over there with you?
It is pretty hot here.
It is.
So it's pretty toasty here for New England. It usually doesn't get this hot, but it has warmed. And as you know, that's I guess they're saying that these is since they started recording heat indexes back in '76, it's been the warmest week in record. So it's a little toasty here. So,
It's
but we do get some humidity here, but not as bad. I don't think out where you are.
Yeah, it's one of those weird years. Like everybody's getting like those record heat numbers, temperature wise, and it's been really hot here. We were out of it for like a week, and then now we have another heat advisory. So back
Oh, you do?
into
You have another one pulling in again then?
yeah, back into the 110s. So we're there.
Yeah. Well,
All right. So
heating and
like
cooling. It's all about getting cooling right now. This is the cooling season.
the busiest time of year. I mean, it's
Yep.
like a good and bad thing, right? You're out there in the heat, but you're making all that money, so it's all worth it at the end.
Yeah.
So
Quick little story. I have a unit up in the attic, and I had my cooling guy come over to just service it.
mhm.
And it was a new guy that they hired, and then he left, and it wasn't working. And then they had another guy come out another 3 days later, and they said, "Well, let's check your Freon. It might be leaking, so we'll fill it full of a extra Freon with a little bit of sealer in there." And he did that and got it pumped up, and it's worked fine. And then it stopped working last night. So
Oh man,
you guys can call in and help me straighten it out.
yeah, I'm sure you know a lot of HVAC guys by now.
I sure do.
Yeah, it sounds like you have a pretty good leak then, if it's going out that quickly. So hopefully they get to it.
Yeah, I got to give him a holler, shout tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay, so everybody knows you as the creator, the founder of Veto Pro Pac, but you started out, I want to say, as a carpenter. Is that correct?
I did. I was in college, and in one summer, I
Hmm.
worked for a framing contractor, framing apartment buildings. And then the next summer, I had no carpentry experience, and then started doing that, and that was a big challenge, having never done that before. And then
So you learned
worked.
everything on the fly.
I did, and it was tough because this is in Connecticut, and there are a lot of what they call maniacs, guys from Maine, that would come down to Connecticut, stay for the week because there was not a lot of work up in Maine, and then go back home for the weekend. And my first job there was the guy. It was probably about 10 below zero. So light powder snow on top of pre-poured slabs. Had to shovel those off, and then go around and snap all the lines for all the walls and the partitions. And after I did that on 4 slabs, I went over and they said, help those guys start framing up the walls and partitions. And, all right. So
Yeah.
those guys were driving a nail in with 3 to 4 shot whacks. And, it was taking me about 10 to 12 to drive a 16 penny common nail. So it was definitely a learning curve. And Back then, not many people help you. That's one question. They say, well, whatever turns you on. So
I
that's
can.
the way it was.
So at what
But
age?
then after that, it was after that in 1971, um, I did get a job up in Maine. I was up there for a visit and just happened to stop into a shop that had a keel of a boat all assembled and painted, primed light gray, and then up on sawhorses and braced off to the plywood deck. And I popped in there and asked the guy what was the keel for, what kind of a boat. He said a lobster boat. Some a bunch of questions, and then he said, after talking to him for half an hour, he said, "How'd you like to build lobster boats?" And that's what I did. So I went back to Connecticut
Mm-hmm.
and came back up and built lobster boats with this guy. His name was Arno Day. He's very well known on the coast of Maine because he would design the lobster boats and build them.
Oh,
And
okay.
so it was a pretty incredible experience because it's like, how do you make a zucchini out of wood? Not like a
Yeah.
house where everything's, straight, plumb, and level. So that's really, that was really a very challenging job. And I look back on it, and it was a great experience from going from the lofting, which is the fine art of lofting, where you basically figure out all the molds and the shapes of the boat on the floor. And you plot this all out on the floor on a 1 foot grid drawn out by pencil and what's called station points. And you have to make all the molds for the
Mm-hmm.
station points, and those get lagged onto a keel assembly. And then they all get attached with what are called rib bands from the bow all the way to the stern. And then you have to steam bend all the oak planks in a steam box so that they bend and follow the shapes of what they call rib bands. Those all get clamped to the shapes of the forward and aft rib bands. And then those all get screwed into the keel. And then you start putting the planks down at the keel and then bring them up, popping the rib bands off as you come up too. But there's a lot of detail. I could talk about it for easily for 2 hours about how you build a lobster boat, but everybody's going to fall asleep if I do that.
No, that's interesting. So you went from being, from framing to helping this guy who designed and built his own boats,
It
and
was.
and all of this is just stuff you learned on the fly. And
It was, yeah, there was no schooling involved. This is
yeah.
all, learning on the job. I never went to trade school. I do have a fine arts degree.
Oh, that's
I
right.
majored in sculpture. And so, being a carpenter just interested me. It was just like, wow, that's cool how they can figure out how to lay out rafters and, and I respected guys that knew that craft and knew how to do that. It was physical. I enjoyed the physical aspects of it. I had no interest in waiting on tables working in a restaurant. And
No.
so it was, for me, it was going from framing to, and this is, before nail guns, and
Oh
then
yeah.
to roofing. And, roofing's pretty brutal work, especially on hot, humid days. A lot of guys, they'll say, they start out and they'll give them a shovel and they say, okay, go up the roof, pop off the caps, and then take the shovel and start ripping the roof down. And then they'll go out to
Mm,
lunch and they won't come back. They'll go like, oh my God, I can't do this. But I was not like that. It's just like anything that tradesmen that were older than me and knew more than I knew, I respected that and would just learn from them. Yeah, some guys that give you a hard time and kind of bust your chops about not giving
hmm.
you information, but there were guys that also that would sincerely tell you how to do something. And then, plus all the little tricks of the trade. And
Sure.
so it was after building lobster boats, and it was $2.75 an hour. I was 21 years old. My rent was $70 a month, but after doing that for 3 years, I had to make more money. And when I
Sure.
first started working with him, and as I said, his name was Arno Day, and he's very well known on the coast of Maine. Um, he said to me, he said, Roger, he said, you'll never be happy building houses, but you'll always be happy building boats because it's like an art form. It's a lot
Hmm.
more complex, but there's the beauty when you're done, the beauty of the shape of a hull. and the boat when you're done on that too. So it was really tough for me to tell him that I had to leave because I met this other young guy my age, and I would see him. This is way up on an island called Deer Isle. It was connected with a suspension bridge to the mainland. But I would run into this guy at the town dump on Sundays, and he had a ponytail. And this is in the early '60s, and no local guys are sporting ponytails. And he stopped by my place one night, and the door to my truck was open, and the light was on. He knocked on the door and said, I'm Jeremy Stewart, and I noticed that your truck lights were on, your door was ajar, and that's how I met him. And then, we started talking, and had he and his wife over for dinner one night. They never took their coats off. It was so cold in the house. And then about 3 years after working at the boat shop, he said that the guy that he was working for, an older Maine master carpenter, had a stroke and was paralyzed on his right side, could no longer swing a hammer. Mm-hmm. And he said, I could pay you $5 an hour building houses and doing renovation. And so, I needed to make that more money. And so I told this guy on a day I had to leave to go build houses, which he told me I would never be happy doing. But, I needed to make more money. So it was hard to tell him that. And so I ended up switching over and building houses up on Deer Isle and doing renovation. And did that it was probably about 5 years, and then went for the next larger tranche of money. I joined the Carpenters Union, and that was $6.75 an hour. I made a connection, and it's really tough to get into the union up there, but I made this connection. It was very lucky, and I got into the union. A lot of guys were questioning me when I showed up, how'd you get in? A lot of local Mainers, because I was not from Maine. And so I got a lot of flack, and that was basically hard hat, forming concrete, and built a sewage treatment plant on the Penobscot River just south of Bangor. And then we put a big addition on a paper mill in Bucksport, Maine. So that was all, basically building forms and pouring concrete. I do a little bit of welding for all the little stirrup lifts to hold up all the rebar in the forms before the forms were made and concrete poured.
And I just want to point out Jennifer. She is also known as HVA Chicks over on Instagram, and she's from the Misfits of HVAC podcast. She's in the chat, and she says that she could not love you anymore because Arnold is a legend. She's from Maine as well.
Oh, she knows it.
Yeah.
Wow.
And she wants to know what's your favorite thing about Maine.
One of my favorite things about Maine is being able to take a clam hoe and go out in a clam flat and dig steamers.
Well, there you go, Jen.
I'm saying that I do enjoy that, and I've dug a lot of clams, but I just love the coast of Maine. I love the peace and quiet. I love the natural world. I'm a saltwater guy. I love being on the water. And I have a house up in Nova Scotia on the ocean, but that's a bit of a hike to get up there. And but I'm still considering the coast of Maine too. I couldn't go there because of COVID. It was locked down, couldn't cross over the border. And it's the house I bought 25 years ago was a wreck with a big barn, but it's right up on a bluff overlooking the ocean at the end of a big, beautiful sand beach. And it's a little piece of heaven, but it is a hike to get up there. So, but for Jennifer, I don't know if she can hear me. I still love the coast of Maine. And my old building partner, he's still building up there, and he's the premier builder now. And he has a piece of land right on a beautiful little cove that he offered to me at a buddy price. So that's kind of sitting out there. We haven't really talked seriously about it, but it is a beautiful little chunk of land it's called Fish Creek Road on Fish Creek, which is a beautiful little inlet. And you just go there and, it's so peaceful, and you hear the loons at night. So it's pretty special place, the coast of Maine.
Yeah, she says she's just excited because nobody really knows about Maine, and if you ever go out there, she said to let her know because she said that you'll be her best friend and this and that. She loves Veto Pro Pac as well. I mean, we all do here in the chat. So
Where does she live in Maine, Adrian?
I don't know. She's always talked about like the lobsters and all that stuff. I don't know. We've talked
Oh
about
yeah,
food and different things.
yeah.
I don't know what part of Maine she's in though. She'll
Okay.
probably mention it in a bit. Um, but yeah, she's saying to buy that place you're talking about.
Well, the seafood, yeah, the seafood in Maine's fantastic. From digging steam. They call them steamer clams. They're soft shelled. They're usually about an inch and a half to 3 inches, and you have to be very careful when you dig them because the shells are very easy to break.
Hmm.
And then lobsters, and it's the same thing in Nova Scotia. When I go to Nova Scotia, one of my neighbors is a lobster fisherman, and he'll take me out hauling lobsters. He'll take me out hand lining for haddock, pollock, or cod, and then he'll go out. He'll say, "Come in the house." I said, "Roger." He says, "It's going to be foggy on Thursday, and you and I are going to go out dragging for mussels under cover of fog, because it's illegal to drag for mussels off in Nova
Mm.
Scotia now because the scalp drags tear up the bottom." But
Oh, okay.
he still does it, and so I'll go out with occasionally. But the mussels, most of the mussels you get in a restaurant are grown on a rope. They're cultured and they're
Hmm.
small. But when we pull them up, of course, when you pull them up, you've got rocks, seaweed, baby lobsters, scallops, crabs, all this stuff, and you open them up and it dumps on the deck, and you got to weed through it and pull out all the mussels, and then you big brooms to sweep everything overboard too. But boy, those mussels are good too. So I'm sure Jennifer would appreciate the mussels that come out, the natural native mussels too. But that's a big part of the coast of Maine is seafood.
Yeah,
And
she's like that. We drag here too at night, and she's from Naples.
Naples. Oh,
Hmm.
okay. Is that near Bangor? I wonder. Huh. I don't think I
I'll
know
have to.
Naples.
No, okay.
Well,
I'll
Jennifer, I lived. That's anything. I lived in Bucksport, Bangor, and Deer Isle.
okay. Well, cool stuff. Yeah, I'm sure she'll let us know. Yeah, she said kind of. So I guess it is close. Sebago Lake, she said.
Oh, Sebago Lake. Yeah, I know Sebago Lake. Yep. Yeah, that's kind of central Maine.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, you got a fellow, Maine person in the house. Always good to see that. So, back to what we were talking about. So you actually went to college for, you said like arts or something,
Yeah, for fine arts. Yeah, and a major in sculpture.
and sculpture too. So,
Right.
I mean, obviously, I think we had talked about this before, and you said that wasn't going to pay well or pay enough. So you got into this just like carpentry and framing, building
Yeah,
boats, and then back.
because you can't coming out of art school, you can't make a living from artwork.
Hmm.
It just doesn't happen like that. And so it was like you got to make a living doing something, and it was just carpentry interested me, and I really enjoyed it. And as I said, I just really respected guys that were older and knew how to do all this, and I just sucked it up like a sponge. And it was, yeah, it's rough. I mean, up in Maine, Jennifer knows it gets down. Sometimes it's like 15 below zero, and we were putting up
God.
aluminum siding on the north side of a house doing the shed roof dormer, and we had pump jacks set up, and we would step out through the windows onto the pump jacks to put up aluminum siding, and I take the gloves on my right hand. I'm right-handed, so it's my hammer hand, and with my left hand, cut the two fingers and the thumb out so that you can grab your nails. And it was
Hmm.
so cold, and they were aluminum nails because aluminum siding. I could stick my fingers into my nail pocket, and the aluminum nails would stick to my fingers, and then just pull
Yeah.
them out and start
okay.
nailing the aluminum siding up. But it was the wind chill factor was 40 below zero. It was minus 15, but it was windy on the north side of the house, 40 below zero. So we go up there and we put up probably about 4 lengths of aluminum clapboards, and then you'd have to jump back in because you couldn't move your fingers anymore.
Yeah.
So, but it's just, you just sucked it up and you did it. It is what it was. And, stripping the roof in the summertime and the heat, that was brutal, but you just did it. And that's what I did. So, but I just, which kind of leads up to the tool bags is that when I worked as a carpenter, and as I say, this were nail guns, everything was hand nailed.
Yeah.
And so when we were framing, and when we built a house, we'd do it. There was 3 of us. We would do everything. Now down here in Norwalk, Connecticut, everybody's specialized. You have guys that just come in, they frame. Then you have the guys that come in and put the roof on. Then the guys that put the siding on. Then the guys that come in and insulate. And then the guys that sheetrock. The guys that tape it. We would do everything. And all of our nails were galvanized because we were near the salt water. So all of our framing nails were galvanized, and they were 16 penny commons. And everybody uses 12 penny. They're shorter by about 1/2 of an inch. And then when we trim, we would trim with galvanized finish nails, 4 penny, 6 penny, and 8 penny. And but we would get in, we'd frame it up, put the windows in, put the siding, put the roof on, do all the fascias and the soffits. And also too, there's no compound miter saws. So where the rake board meets the fascia, that's a compound cut. And we would draw that out by hand, then cut it by hand. And with saws that you would have to sharpen by hand. Now you buy a hand saw, it gets dull, you throw it away and buy another one.
Yeah.
So it was very different. And but I would make all my toolboxes, and I'd made them out of wood, and I actually enjoyed making them. And I made our nail boxes too. Like, when you're framing, you get your nails in 50-pound cardboard boxes. And then, after a while, those boxes start to explode. They get wet out in the weather there, and they, start to fall apart. And then the nails are all over the place. So I had made nail boxes for the galvanized common framing nails. And then I made nail boxes for all the finished nails. And then I made my toolboxes. And I enjoyed making them. And I started making them when I was in the boat shop. And interestingly enough, the ones that were in the boat shop, the handle was a center panel. So it was a piece of 1/2-inch plywood, and that would be cut out with the loop, almost like the Veto Pro Pac handle, and then a cutout so you could grab it. So that gave you the partition to divide the bag and the handle. Whereas the building houses, the toolboxes were made with, you could use a broomstick, you could use a closet pole, or you could find a nice branch that had a nice sweep in it, peel the bark off it, and then that branch could become the handle, or you could cut it out with the jigsaw or handsaw with a nice radius, and then with the file around the edges over, sand it. And so it was, making. And then when I was in Union, I made a replica of what they call the Kennedy box. The Kennedy box was a steel toolbox, and it had a knockout for a framing square. And for HVAC techs not know it or don't know it, but on a framing square, you have a 16-inch leg, and then you have the 24-inch leg. And so the 24-inch leg would fit down into the steel box, and there was a knockout. You take a screwdriver and knock it out so that the 16-inch leg stuck up through the hole. And so I made a Kennedy box out of wood. And that was, got a lot of crazy comments. Why the hell did you make the box out of wood? You can buy them; they're made out of metal. And I said, no, I just wanted to make one. And so that was kind of like, something that I enjoyed doing on that.
So you made them for yourself or for everybody there, or?
No, I just made them for myself.
And they just, they just saw you, made some comments about it.
They did. Yep. They just made some comments about it, and some guys made some very primitive toolboxes that were very basic, and mine were a little more involved, and had slots for things, like on the boat building toolboxes that I made. I would take a board that would screw to the internal piece of plywood that became the handle. And then you would it's called dado. You dado it out for the width of your chisels. So a dado is when if you cut into a board that was 3/4 of an inch thick, and you cut a dado that's an inch wide by 1/4 of an inch deep, so that the blade of your 1-inch chisel would fit right down in there and stand up vertically. And then if you had an inch, a 3/4 inch chisel, you cut a dado that was 3/4 of an inch. And then a 1/2 inch would be a 1/2 inch dado, and up to a 2-inch dado for a 2-inch wide chisel. So that way you can store all your hand tools vertically in that.
Gotcha.
So, but the kind of the kicker where Veto kind of came from was after living in Maine for a little over 10 years, I went through a divorce and moved to New York City, and to pursue my art career and get away from some, just the kind of being in Maine for a while, and then the divorce kind of emotionally threw me off, and so moved to New York City. Had an opportunity for a place and lived on the Lower East Side, which is a pretty rough, tumble place. And I sold my place up in Maine, and I got a job with Mordan Construction out of Howard Beach, Queens, doing loft renovation in an area called Soho. And carpenters in New York City, they really don't work with wood. They work with steel studs. They're mostly steel studs and sheetrockers.
Yeah.
And I walked by this. They're renovating these lofts, and there are these big archways, almost like these big arch garage entryways. And they had piles of sand for the concrete mixing. They had piles of the steel studs, and they had some wood there. And I just popped in there. I asked for the foreman. This guy called out for this guy named Morty. Morty showed up, and I said, "You need carpenters?" And he said, "What can you do?" I said, "Well, I can do anything." And he said, "Can you work with wood?" I said, "Yeah, that's what I do." And he said, "Well, we have these pine boards over here. They were 1x10, number 3 pine. Number 3 pine, you get a lot of knots that are literally dropped out. It's pretty ratty wood as opposed to like number 2. The knots don't usually drop out at number 2." And he said, "Okay," he said, "I need to have wooden sills cut into all the windows, because what they did is they tore out all the walls right down to the brick walls on the interior, and they came out about, 6 inches, and studded up steel walls, and then they would sheetrock them, and you had the returning into the windows, but they wanted a wooden sill." And so, I don't know, he said something like, "All right, $10 an hour." I said, "How about 15?" And he said, "Nah, it's $10 an hour." I said, "Well, how about 15?" He said, I said, "Okay, I'll work for a week, and then we'll talk at the end of the week." So he said, "There's the pine there." He said, make the sills on all the windows. And so that's what I did. And of course, all the returns weren't parallel. They were off a bit, so they all had to be scribed in. And then, I just rounded the edges as they came out. That's called softening the edges. So you break the sharp edge of a board, and sanded them down and did those. And, at the end of the week, he said, "All right, I'll pay you 15. These are beautiful." So that was, working as a carpenter in New York was completely different than working as a carpenter in Maine.
Oh, okay.
And so that's, moving to New York and doing that.
Is that when you started the Veto? Because there was a bag, or I don't know if it's a toolbox that you told me about. That's kind of the first one that you started, where you had your vertical tools, like you mentioned.
Well, that was what happened, Adrian, was, and all of a sudden, that first job, it was fairly close, and I could walk to it from where I was living. It was called Bond Street between Bowery and Lafayette, and I could walk there, and I'd walk there with my wooden toolbox on my shoulder,
Oh, okay.
and it was about, I don't know, 6 or 8 blocks away. And then a couple of times I had to take the subway as we started to move around to the other job locations. And getting on and off the subway with a wooden toolbox was very challenging. You jab somebody with a framing square sticking out of there, you get shot. So it was like, this isn't working. And
Yeah.
so I went down to Canal Street, and there was about 4 hardware stores down on Canal Street, and one of them was called Tunnel Supply. And I walked in there, and this would have been like 1981.
Mhm.
And I walked in there, and there were not a lot of soft side bags on the market. And the one that I got was like a canvas mason's bag. So it was like 10-ounce cotton canvas. It had vinyl stitched on the bottom, and it returned up about 4 inches.
Mhm.
And it was just cotton canvas. And it had a metal frame with 2 leather handles, and you'd pull it together, and then these 2 leather straps. But there were no pockets. So all your tools were just all piled up on the inside. It was very frustrating to reach in there to get a tool. You get
Oh,
jabbed by
yeah.
a sharp chisel, or your chisel, your nice sharp edge of the chisel would rub up against a rat's tail file, and you'd lose the edge on the chisel. And if you couldn't find it digging through it or get injured, you dump everything on the floor, take it out on the floor, find what you need, then put it all back in.
Mhm.
And so I have that bag here in the office. Here I
Oh,
have a
really?
shelf that kind of has, yeah, that kind of shows the progression of,
Mhm.
from wooden toolboxes and all too. So that bag, I worked out of it because with the straps latched together, I could travel around the city with no exposed tools.
Sure.
But it was just, pardon my French, a horizontal shit show of tools in there. Every time you wanted something, it was
Oh,
tough
yeah.
to get access to it. And so that's, out of that frustration, um, I started buying other soft side bags. And that style that opens up like that, kind of like a doctor's bag, that's called a gate
Mhm.
mount style. And the tool bag company, um, that was a very common style. And sometimes they put pockets on the inside, but when you close it up, the pockets were facing each other. So you really couldn't put tools in there. And the sharp tools, especially sharp chisels, as you're putting them in the fabric, the sharp edging tools would get caught on the fabric as you're putting them in. So that wasn't working. And then to pick it up, it took 2 hands to pick. A floppy handle would be on one side and the other floppy handle would be on the other side. So at the end of the day, you're picking everything up. You've got a 50-foot extension cord coiled under your arm. You got a 4-foot level, a worm drive
Mhm.
saw, and you go to pick up your tool bag, and you have to put this all down because it takes 2 hands to pick the 2 handles up, then bring them together. Then you could carry it with 1 hand.
Yeah.
So it was just, there were a lot of frustrations with the bags that were on the market. And so I'll keep going with the story if you want me to, how it happened.
Yeah, because we had talked about it briefly, and you mentioned that you basically made your own out of, I don't know if it was out of that bag itself or you made
I made it.
modifications.
Yeah, what I did, and it was in 1998. I'd moved out of the city by then, and I was living in Connecticut, and the Bucket Boss liner came out, which fit around a 5-gallon empty joint compound bucket. There's a lot of joint
Mhm.
compound buckets on construction sites in dumpsters from guys that, just finished taping. And so this guy came up with this idea of what was called the Bucket Boss, which fit around the outside with vertical tiered pockets. And then there were flaps that fit on the inside, which anchored the sleeve around the bucket. And so I bought that and tried that, and that was cool because it oriented the tools vertically. The only problem about that is that it was awkward because it was a round bucket, so it didn't hang ergonomic to your body. I remember
Mhm.
we were doing a renovation on a customer's house, and walking into the customer's house, a cat's paw, which is a nail puller, which is sharp on one end,
Yeah.
sticking out of the external pocket, gouged out the door jamb on their front door as I was walking into the house. It's like, ugh. And then another time, a dog ran out in front of me, and I hit the brakes hard. As a contractor, I had a van because that protected everything out of the weather rather than open pickup. And so when I stopped short, the bucket flipped over in the back of my truck, and it was like an explosion in a hardware store. There was holes all over the place, and screws and nails that were thrown in the bottom. They were all over the place too. So this thing, it was cool because you could see your tools. They were oriented vertically, but it wasn't ergonomic. You had that tiny little plastic handle on the joint compound bucket. And so there are a lot of shortcomings. And so it was in 1998 that it was on a Saturday, and I took that liner and dumped all the tools out of it and laid it on my workbench. When you lay it flat, it was about 16 inches wide. And I had some leftover 1/4 inch long plywood, and I ripped it out of my table saw, 16 inches wide by 18 inches long, cut out a radius on the top, and did a cutout so you could get a handle on it. And I duct taped some pipe insulation, foam pipe insulation, to replicate a grip. And then I slid the sleeve up and then pop riveted it to the wooden panel. Now this sleeve that fit a round bucket was on a flat panel, so it would hang closer to your body. And then there's an American injection molding company called Plano. They make injection molded plastic fishing tackle boxes. And they were the first ones to come out with a soft side gate mount style bag that had a plastic bottom. And I thought that was brilliant. But it only returned up about 3/4 of an inch, and the plastic was very thin, so the bottom was warped. But the plastic offered 3 things. Number 1, moisture protection. Number 2, wear and tear protection. And then number 3, stability to a loaded tool bag. So I bought it just because of the plastic bottom, but it was just a standard gate mount style. Yeah. And so I took that and cut the zippers and the handles off, and just left probably about 3 or 4 inches of fabric riveted to the plastic or stitched to the plastic base. And then this panel, plywood panel with the bucket boss liner now attached to it, dropped that into the bottom of that. And then with hand clamps pinched it, drilled holes through it, and put pop rivets to anchor this panel to the cutoff gate mount style bag with the plastic bottom, and that gave a bottom to this thing that I made.
Okay. So you put that together. You started using it at work. Were the other guys impressed, or just more negative comments?
No, we were doing a high-end kitchen renovation, and on Friday the guys came in and put the brand new granite countertops in, and I told the customers, I said, you can put away your hot plates and cook in the kitchen this weekend. We'll be back to put all the cabinet and drawer pulls on. And so this was in May, because I remember it was a first nice warm day, you could wear a t-shirt. And I made this thing on the weekend, and it was Monday morning, and I showed up with it, filled up with tools, and walked in, and the guy said, "What the hell's that?" I said, "This is my new tool bag." And I stood it up on the brand new granite countertops, and it wouldn't stand up perfectly. It would kind of lean over. So I leaned it against the new Sub-Zero.
Sure.
And I had my coffee, and guys we folded up all of our tarps and our tools and put them away in a pantry. And the 2 guys that were helping, kind of busting my chops about it, laughing at it. And I said, "Yeah, you guys are laughing at this." I said, "But you guys are digging through your gate mount style bags. You're getting jabbed by sharp chisels. You're hearing heavy metal music crashing in your head. I'm hearing classical music. The birds are chirping. I can sip my coffee, and I can just select the tool."
Yeah.
And that's really, kind of how it started. And then to close it up, and so that all the tools were protected. The bottom coming up much higher for here in New England, so you could set it down in slush or muck or snow and not worry about getting the bottom wet. Having an injection molded handle with a nice, solid rubber overmolded grip. So it gave you a positive connection to a loaded tool bag instead of these floppy fabric webbed handles. And
Yeah.
and then that's, I had a meeting with my accountant going over my tax stuff. And I said, by the way, and I showed him a drawing, a very primitive drawing that I did. I have an idea for a tool bag, a name of a patent attorney. And he gave me the name of a patent attorney. And I got in touch with him, and took about 2 years to get the patents on it.
So like immediately you thought,
So
that you
you
should.
guys can see, this is what I was talking about, what I made right here.
Oh, okay.
That was from 19. You can see the plastic bottom, cut off, and then this, which fit around a 5-gallon bucket, is now on a flat panel. So it's hung much more ergonomic to your bottom. So that was the first Veto Pro Pac tool bag right there.
Oh, okay. That was going to be my next question. The first Veto Pro Pac. So then immediately you kind of just thought to take this to market then, get the patent and everything ready?
Well, once I got the patents, Adrian, that took 2 years, and I
Yeah.
wasn't really sure whether, how am I going to get this manufactured? It's a huge challenge. And so then I thought what I would do, since there, already existed tool bag companies. One of them was Duluth. Everybody probably knows Duluth Trading. It's been around for years. And then the other one was the Bucket Boss brand, because they make game out style tool bags too. And I thought, well, maybe I could license it to them. And then they have their own connection with their factories, and they could get it made. But they turned it down because to make injection molded parts, you have what's called the tooling. And these are big blocks of steel that get cored out, and then they get bolted into an injection molding machine. They come together, and hot plastic gets injected in there. They cool, they open up, the part pops out. The toolings are very expensive. And the bag that I designed, it had 3 toolings, one for the base, one for the handle, and one for the overmolded rubber grip. And both of these companies at the time felt that they would never recoup the value of the tooling. The price would be too high on the tool. The price point for the tool bag would be too high, and they would not sell at that price point to get their profit margins. And so I basically got rejected. Most tool bags at the time were like $29.95. Maybe the most expensive was $49.95. And so it was, I got shot down twice. And then, it's just like, well, I got to get this thing made because I believe so strongly in it that it was better than any other tool bag, because you can see all your tools in a tough, rugged package.
So at that point, what would be the price point that you were thinking, or like what would it have been?
I didn't know, Adrian, because I didn't have any pricing for the tooling or anything.
Oh, okay.
I had no idea what it would cost.
They just thought it was too expensive.
They did, but I didn't feel that way at all, because it to me, it was so different than what they were selling, and so much more functional. And so I just, all my energy and intention was placed on trying to figure out, well, how can I get this manufactured? Because these guys don't want to do it. And so, for about a month, just kind of chewing on it and trying to scratch my head and figure out how to do this. And I finally went to it's like a Dick's Sporting Goods. It's called Sport Authority. I don't think they exist anymore. But I went in there looking at any kind of bags that had cool innovation, like backpacks, OGO brand, Jan Sports, going through to, any kind of bags, gym bags, rollerblade bags. And then I went walking through the golf bag aisle, and I don't play golf, but I got hit by lightning, and it was like, that's it. Whatever factory makes a golf bag could make this tool bag, because all golf bags have a plastic bottom, and then the fabric body fits over the plastic bottom, and it gets riveted to that plastic bottom. So I literally tore some tags off bags and stuffed them into my shirt, and then went home and called up the golf bag companies and asked to speak with their corporate attorney, because I had patents already.
Okay.
And asked if there was any way that there was a source or a connection to a factory in China that made golf bags, because they used to make golf bags in the US, but they weren't making golf bags anymore over there or in the US. It all moved to China. And that's major brands too: Titleist, Callaway, TaylorMade, Ping, Ogio. So anyways, the corporate attorney for TaylorMade was a woman, and she called me back 2 days later and she said, Roger, I have a name for you. And all the corporate headquarters for the golf bag companies are out in Los Angeles. And this guy was in Newport Beach. And she gave me his phone number. I called him up, had him sign an NDA, said that I have a tool bag design. It needs to be manufactured in a golf bag factory because they're injection molded parts. And he said, well, send out your drawing. I said, I want to come out and meet you. So I flew out there. He came to the airport, LAX, picked me up, took me to his office. He was in Army intelligence stationed in Southeast Asia. He had to learn to speak fluent Chinese to do all of his Army intelligence work. And so after he retired from the Army, he sold McDonnell Douglas helicopters for a while. And then he was a passionate golfer. And then he decided to set up his own business sourcing for American golf bag brands and companies over in China, using his Chinese language skills to communicate between the factory and the golf bag companies. And so I had about a 3-hour meeting with him. He was a reasonably sharp guy, and he got it. And he said, well, I got to leave for China in about a month. I'll take your drawings and we'll get something started. And that's how it started. And it took almost probably 3 months before I got the first round sample. And, he called me up and he said, Roger, I got the sample here. I'm going to overnight it to you. And, so I'm waiting for this sample to come, foaming at the mouth. I was so excited, and it showed up. And for the bottom, they just took ABS board. ABS board looks like particle board,
okay.
Half inch. And they just cut out a rectangle that replicated the bottom. Same thing with the handle. So there were no injection molded parts, hadn't even got into that, the cost of the tooling and all that.
Oh, okay.
But when I unzipped it, and there was no detail on the outside, it was just the cover. And when you unzipped it, when I saw the vertical tiered pockets, the way they had stitched those, it was like, yes, that's what I wanted. It was beautiful the way they did those. And then, he said, okay, now they need the information to make the tooling for the base. And I didn't know that there was 3D programs. This is 2000. And so I figured out that the bag, since the interior pockets were 4 inches wide, the bottom row, and there was 4 of them, so that's 16 inches. So I figured that the base should be 16 and a half. That would give me a 1/4 inch on either end for material to get riveted to the base. And then for the width, I started out first at 12 inches. That felt too wide. Down to 11, that was too wide. 10, that was too wide. 9 and a half seemed like the sweet spot because you're 4 1/4 inches into the center of the bag. So it's not hanging too far away from your body. And so I went to the lumberyard and I bought a 1x12, number 2 pine. I don't know, it was a 10 or 12 footer. And I ripped it 9 and a half inches wide and then chopped out pieces 16 and a half inches long, glued up 4 pieces, clamped them together, glued them up overnight. And then the next day, I belt sanded them, flush all the way around, and then took my router and then screwed a board to it and screwed it to a stump of a log, and then took my router and routed all the rounded edges on the vertical corners around the bottom, and then actually routed out a foot. Like if you see the foot on the pot of our bags, I did that in wood, routed out with my router. It's not exactly like the foot we have now, but anyways, so I got what replicated a base out of this laminated glued up pieces of pine, and then put a coat of satin finish urethane on it and took a Sharpie and wrote my name and phone number on it, and then 2 more sandy between coats to make it smooth, and then sent that block of wood to China. And no questions asked, they actually made a tooling from that wooden base that I made.
Oh yeah.
And they, the next thing was he said, okay, now they need the information for the handle. So I made the handle out of birch plywood, 1/2 inch birch plywood, cut out the little recess for the webbing detail. And then for the grip, I used, I don't know, it was solid maple or solid birch, and I shaped it at the round shape, and then filed all around, and then drew all the ergonomic detail. And I bought that little Dremel tool, which is like a dentist tool. I was going to cut all the detail out, but I knew I would never get it exactly the way I wanted. And the day that I was going to cut that all out, and it clamshelled over and screwed together over the handle. And the day I was going to do all the route out all the ergonomic detail, I just, I knew I could never get it the way I wanted it. And so I just went to a phone book, looked up product development. There was a guy just an hour north of me in Danbury, Connecticut, and called him up. His name was hvac, and said that I'm designing a handle for a tool bag. Is that something you can draw up on a computer? Can I come up tomorrow? He said, yeah, come on up. And met with him and showed him the handle, which I have here. It's still downstairs on the shelf there, the wooden one that I made.
Oh, okay.
And he said, yeah, I can draw that up on a computer. I said, well, I got to go to Nova Scotia, but I'll blow Nova Scotia up. This is really important to get this done. He said, no, he said, you can go to Nova Scotia. We'll just fax back and forth. I said, well, I don't have a TV. I don't have a fax machine. I get away from technology up there. It's just me and the ocean. I want peace and quiet. And so then I said, well, no, there's a boat shop. They have a fax machine. I'll give them $20. So I went up to Nova Scotia, went up to the boat shop, gave them $20, said, let me use your fax machine. So I go up there in the morning and go into the boat shop. The guy said, hey, Roger, your fax is over there. And I go up and pull it up, and I draw on top of what he sent me, his computer generated drawing, to change, tweak it and change the design of it, what I wanted. And we went back and forth probably about 4 times. And then he showed me like a 3/4 view. He was just showing profile shots. And then he did a 3/4 profile view. And then I approved that. And then he said, now when you come back, he said, I'll have a rapid prototype, and you can touch and feel it and chew on it, whatever you want to do with it, and you're happy with it. I can send the factory a 3D file for the overmolded rubber grip and one for the plastic handle, and they can make the tooling from that. And I said, oh my God, that's awesome. So I was just flying by the seat of my pants, Adrian, doing this. And it was just, I believe so strongly in it that it was better than any other tool bag out there for quick and easy access. And I was so sick of digging through these tool bags and spending 15 minutes digging around my truck looking for a tool. And so
I get it. Like that's one of the things that I love about your tool bags is all the storage, the panels. And then now you have like a tool bag for everybody, basically. And even here in the chat, I went ahead and asked, who here has Veto. A lot of people like the TP lineup, and I'm sure it's because of the hard bottom base. The MCT is also getting in. People are showing love to that one. The MB3 is a big favorite too, among a lot of the guys here. So, and I believe I have like most of those already, because I already lost count. I have a good amount because I like to have a bag for each like necessity, and every day. Yeah, everyday bag. I have an install bag. I have like I love the tote bags, to carry, big parts, motors, things like that. So, and Logan, I appreciate the super chat, man. Let me go through the chat real quick. So that first Veto bag that's the one that kind of made up yourself, and then you had them like manufacture that same one.
Yeah, that was the Model XL. It was the very first one. So the bottom.
Okay, so Model XL was the first Veto.
Yeah, the Model XL. We still manufacture it. Still exists. Sure. And that's that was the body fabric was brown with black and gray trim. And after they made the tooling, they said now it's time for you to go to China and do all the finish, the details. And it was 3 trips to China to design the XL. And so I get a sample. I take it back to the hotel room. I stayed at this golf resort out in the middle of nowhere. So I go back, the car would pick us up, take us to the factory in the morning. In the evening, go back to this golf resort, and you're kind of out in the middle of nowhere. So there's nothing to do but kind of walk around, go into the pro shop and look at the golf bags and golf shoes and golf clubs, and there were a couple bars and a couple restaurants there. So, but I met a lot of young guys that were golf bag designers there, and they actually ended up, hanging out drinking with those guys, and they actually had me designing their color choices for their golf bags. And as they, it's like, well, we like your design sensibility. Why don't you help us pick our colors? After a few beers. And so it was like, these working with some of these guys on this, young guys that were golf bag designers. So, but it took 3 trips to China to design the XL, and then finally it was finished, and the lumber yard that I used as a contractor was a good family-owned lumber yard. The head buyer, I had 3 all-black samples that I brought back from China, and I had a meeting with him. I said, this is a tool bag that I've designed, and I'm going to be bringing it to market, just to give you a heads up. And he said, well, we're doing our 100th anniversary home show down at the Greenwich Hyatt. He said, why don't you take out a table? Cost you $500, and then you can have your samples there and get some feedback. So I made up these little cards, 4x6 card that you'd seen the Veto Pro Pac Model XL, and that was like in January, and it was in the winter, and they were due to come in. The first container was due to come in June, end of June. So I had little cards on a little square box, 2 little square boxes, one that said that when they came in, you would be interested in possibly buying one. I didn't take anybody's credit card,
Gotcha.
but I took 48 cards of people that would seriously look at it and possibly consider buying one.
Okay.
So the buyer called me up a couple of days later and said, how did you do? And I said, well, I took 48 pre-orders. And he said, wow, that's awesome. And he said, I'll give you your first PO for 80 bags. And I launched it at $119.95.
Okay.
And everybody thought I was nuts because, for $120 for a tool bag, these bags are $29.95. These are $39. These are $49.
Yeah,
who's going to buy
especially
a tool bag $120?
yeah,
So,
especially
but it was so
back
radically
then.
different. Yeah, it was so radically different than the other tool bags on there. I think that's really kind of comes down to it, is that the other tool bag companies, they were designed by designers who never seriously swung a hammer in their life. They didn't really understand what it's like day in and day out when you're working and you need your hand tools. So Veto was the first tool bag company that had a tradesman behind it, that understood what a tool bag should be.
Exactly.
And so I really think that's why it differentiated. And, there's a lot of tool bag companies that kind of look at what we do and try to copy what we do. And, but, it's a swing and a miss.
Yeah, I was actually going to say that because somebody had mentioned that in the chat. I have to go back to look for it, but they're like, a lot of these tool bags, are not made by techs or people that are in the field. And more than anybody, like what you need as far as like the first bag that you made was for, framing or carpentry and that kind of stuff. And then,
for carpenters.
Yeah. And then slowly you kind of like catered to all the other trades and stuff. And it's what they need. And then somebody else had mentioned, I don't know if they were talking about Milwaukee or some other company that they're like, they look like they're trying to take inspirations from the Veto bags and stuff like that, which is what you just mentioned.
Yeah, Milwaukee. Yeah, Milwaukee, Klein. And then there's that company over in the UK called Velocity, which is blatant kind of
Oh, that's right. I just I had seen them a couple years ago or some time ago, and I was like, are those like, those are basically like Veto but for like up north or something? Or I don't know where they're from. Is it?
It's a UK company.
Oh, okay.
And I don't think either of those guys were tradesmen. They just looked at our bags and tried to make a bag look close enough to Veto, but not close enough to, kind of. It's really tough to go after air companies that are knocking you off for patent infringement on that. But just a little. If you look at their handle, and I'm just going to draw this up real quick.
Mm-hmm.
If you
And
cut
it,
my handle, ran it through a bandsaw and cut it, it's like an oval shape. Their handle.
and the guys in the chat want to know if they've what do they call it, like fringe on on your patents?
This is a Veto handle, right? This one right here.
Uh-huh.
If I cut the grip in half, it's oval shaped, so it's
Okay.
comfortable in your hand. A velocity handle is like this.
Okay.
The,
Oh
the
yeah, I get you.
triangular shape.
Triangle,
That's not
yeah.
comfortable in your hand.
No.
And then, all their handles are like that, and they didn't figure that out. So that point is digging it into, when you hold your hand like that, that point is digging into your grip or your fingers. So, but
And do you have to deal with the like patent infringement?
yeah, I mean that's kind of tough to do that. It costs a lot of money to do that, and it's a distraction from
Okay.
and it's just we just stay ahead of the curve with what we're doing. We just keep
Well,
producing.
sure. You
It's like
got
Adrian, you said, I was a carpenter. I didn't do heating and cooling,
mhm.
but when all my distribution initially was in residential construction. So all my reps, the reps that build distribution, they may carry 16 different lines, like, extension cords or silicone glue or caulk guns or whatever, hammers. All my reps were Stabila reps because the Stabila levels were a premium brand. And so they were used to the pushback of bringing in a premium brand that's expensive. And a lot of dealers say, well, why is somebody going to buy that when I have these levels over here? They're $40, and the Stabila levels they're $120. They were used to that. So these Stabila reps, because the guy that manages them came to my booth. I did a JLC live show up in Providence, Rhode Island, residential construction show when I just had 6 bags. His name is Gary Simmons, and he came by. He said, "What's this Veto Pro Pac tool bags? I never heard of these." I said, "It's a tool bag company I started." And he said, "Wow, these are beautiful. How much are they?" And I told him the price. And he
Mhm.
said, "Wow, yeah." He said they're worth it. And then the next day to the booth, and he brought me a sheet of paper, and he said, "These are our rep groups that cover all of the U.S." He said, "You're going to have a hard time building distribution because you're a premium brand, and these bags, the price point on these bags is steep, and a lot of guys are going to push back on it. But my reps are used to that pushback. They know how to deal with it." So after 2 years, I had a full network of Stabila reps building distribution into lumber yards and contractor supply houses. And then in 2008, the recession hit, and it really took the wind out of the sails because everybody stopped spending money on their houses. And so carpenters were dropping off the wire left and right. And so there was a heating and cooling company nearby called Galt Energy in Westport, Connecticut. And I reached out to Sam Galt, and I said that I have a tool bag company here, next town over in Norwalk. I'd like to meet with his techs and see their tool bags and have them pick a bag out of my lineup and work out of them for about a month. And then I would go out on service calls with them to understand how they need to work. And he said, "Yeah, it's great. That's a good idea." And I did that. And so they had, the propane guys, gas guys, oil guys, and then the cooling guys. And they had 24 different techs, and they were all working out of like Husky brand, CLC, no name brands. And I had them dump all their tools out, pick a bag out of my lineup, and then fill the Veto bag up and go to work with them. And I would pick 2 guys a week. I go over there at 7:30 in the morning and go out on service calls with their heating and cooling techs, understand how they worked. And after I understood it, the only thing that was really different was that the pockets weren't big enough to accommodate the meters that they would use. And as a carpenter, I never used meters. I had a little pocket laser level, but
Yeah.
that's a closer thing to a meter. So I went to China and spent 5 weeks there, right through Christmas, and the LC, keeping the same tool pocket layout on the front, because carpenter's tools and HVAC tools, like chisels, screwdrivers, channel locks, vice grips, wrenches, that stuff's all the kind of is the same, and it all fits in those front pockets. But on the
Yeah.
back side, on the lower pockets, I had those made out of neoprene, which is a stretchy material. And so that would accommodate whatever size field piece, or whatever size meter you're using, whether it's a clamp meter, multimeter, whatever. And so the LC changed the backside of the pocket. So the LC became the Tech LC, and the XL became the Tech XL, and then the XLT, which was a laptop / tool bag, and then the LT, which was a pure laptop bag, and then the MB, and then the TP3. So I did all those bags in 5 weeks, designed them all, stayed there right through Christmas, and then came home and changed the colors from body fabric being brown for the contractor carpenter series to black for the tech series, and placed the POs. And then we did a heating and cooling trade show down in Annapolis, Maryland. A heating and cooling rep agency came by that covered the mid-Atlantic. They were impressed with the bags, said they'd like to carry the line. We put together an agreement, signed the deal, and then they offered to put together a full rep network in the heating and cooling market throughout the U.S. And that took 2 years to do that, of AAA rated rep agencies. And then that got us into heating and cooling. And the heating and cooling thing, which is great about that, is number one, you guys don't really wear like a carpenter, wear a tool belt. You guys use tool bags. And carpenter doesn't usually use the tool bag. He'll keep a tool bag in the truck, but he's not, very rarely brings it on the job. He'll feed out of the tool bag to fill up his tool apron if he's framing or if he's doing trim work. And also too, is that heating and cooling is pretty much recession proof, because when your air conditioner goes down, you don't care what it costs, you're going to get it fixed.
Oh yeah.
Or same thing with the heat. When you lose your heat, you gotta whatever that costs, you want that heat back on in the middle of winter on that too. So that's kind of how it got into those markets.
Yeah, that's awesome. So like after your first line, you went into the heating and cooling side, and then that's cool that you went to actually work with these guys or tag along, to see how they work. That's what I think sets you apart too.
I even went on some installs, and I went on some. Yeah, I did. I went on some installs, and I went on some removals. It was sledgehammer, smashing up the oil burners and all. So it was just, kind of seeing what these guys. I love to work, but I like to know where my tools are. And so it's just like, it's. I enjoyed going out with these guys, seeing how they work, and all the things that they do. Tuning up the oil burner and checking the condensers and and the air handlers and all that too. So it was just, I kind of knew what you guys did, but I never really stayed there while you were doing it and concentrate on, what you're doing and how you were doing it. And, it's quite technical compared to carpentry.
Oh, that's awesome.
So that gave me enough knowledge to kind of understand, what I would do with changing the heating and coolant to the tech series.
Yeah, that tech series was for HVAC techs now. And did you go? I know you said you started with a trade show, and that's how you got your first like orders, and then you continue to do like the trade show, like just kind of showing out the new bags and stuff.
Yeah, there in construction, residential construction world, there were two magazines. One was called Fine Home Building, which was beautiful 4-color images. And then there was the Journal of Light Construction, which was kind of like the blue collar journal. And it was printed on newsprint, no 4-color pictures. The pictures were just black and white. And the Journal of Light Construction would do these 5 shows a year. I'm sorry. Yeah, no, 4 shows a year, construction shows. And there were actually live demonstrations. Guys would show you how to frame a dormer or how to, put a asphalt roofs on, how to sheetrock, how to tape, how to lay out and cut rafters. So these live demonstrations were going on. And I subscribed to both magazines. And so the Journal of Light Construction show was called JLC Live. I think that's, because there was live demonstrations, sawdust was flying all over the place. And that was my first trade show. And I went to a sawmill, bought a piece of waney edged oak for make a table with splayed legs. And I had a little banner, and I had just the Model XL tool bag and my little 10 by 10 booth. And there I was with just that one tool bag. And my main carpenter buddy of mine came down and, helped me with the show. So it was just the two of us. But I would do all 4 shows. And the home show was always in Providence, Rhode Island, starting in March. And then the next show would be either in Chicago, Minneapolis, or Cincinnati, alternating between those 3 cities. And then the next one would be up in either Seattle or Portland, up in the Northwest. And then the next one would be down in the Southwest in Anaheim or Long Beach. So I would do all 4 shows. And so that was 2 years that I had just the one bag, the XL. And,
Okay.
Now I was starting to get this is before all the reps too. I was starting to get just distributions. Some contractor supply houses started carrying it. Some lumberyards started carrying it through word of mouth. And then I was starting to make a little money with it, so I could afford to do the LC, the smaller version of the XL, and then the big daddy, the double XLF, which was like a soft side version of the classic carpenter's wooden tool box, because it was 25 and a half inches long by 9.5 inches wide. And then I had 2 more bags. So there's a total of 3 bags, the LC, the XL, and then the double XLF. And then it was those getting in. I think that was when I picked up the Stabila reps. Yeah, that's right. I had the 3 bags and picked up the Stabila reps. And then, they started to build distribution. So the revenue started coming in. And then with the same toolings, I said, well, I don't have to invest in new toolings, but I can get 3 new bags out of the existing bottom and the handles, but just make them open. So that's where the OTLC came in, the OTXL, and the OT double XL. And so now I had 6 bags, but that was after 2 years. So it was 2 years with just the XL.
Okay.
And then it gave me, 2 years to develop the LC and the double XL. And then they came out 2 years later. Then I had 3. And then it gave me another 2 years to do the OTLC, the OTXL, and then the OT double XL. And then it was after those bags.
You were doing this all by yourself this whole time, or like designing and everything?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was doing
going
all
to
by
China.
myself, and I was going over there, and I break out my framing pencil and I draw by hand, draw the bags by hand. And all these hotshot young golf bag designers would come in and open up their Macs, and they'd sit there for about 3 hours, and then they'd disappear, and I'd be there for 2 or 3 weeks. And I'd get a sample back, like a full-size tool bag. I'd meet with them on a Monday and go over the drawing, and I'd draw by hands, and then I'd make photocopies on there, and then I'd have them with their red pens mark in Chinese any of the revisions on my drawings. And then, for a full-size tool bag, if I met with them on a Monday, I could get another version the following Monday. It would take them a week to make it. And then I would go over and I would they have these white crayons, markers, and I could literally mark on the bag. Like if the opening of the pocket, it need another inch of circumference, then I'd mark it. I write on, this needs to be an inch bigger, or the pocket needs to be another half inch deeper, or whatever. or this piece of webbing, instead of being 1.25 inches, it really needs to be 1.5 inches wide. And
Gotcha.
so that's why these hotshot young golf bag designers, they have these beautiful computer generated drawings and doing everything by hand, drawing it by hand. And so it would take me longer to develop it. But, I think the factory thought that I was kind of a novelty, that I was doing this all by
Yeah.
hand, and a little bit of a nutcase, but, they're pretty charmed by me. And so I actually had a lot of good time with these people. I go out to dinner with them and all, and whereas these other guys, they're kind of cold and would just disappear. So I built a very strong relationship with the factories, and the first golf bag factory, he started to get a little upset because the materials of the tool bag were so heavy. They were 1,800 denier polyester, and golf bag only 600. And so he had 8 lines for the golf bags to go through. And then whenever it was time for one of the bags to go through, whatever bag was open, it would go through it, and the sewers would break the needles on their machines because the materials were so heavy. And they started complaining, and this is after about, and he was a little bit of an egomaniac. He wasn't real helpful in terms of saying, Roger, here's a really cool material. It's just as strong as what you're using, but it's lighter. He never
Okay.
really offered anything up. And so I eventually left him, and through a woman that had worked there for him, she left him too, because he gave a lot of stress to people. He would yell and scream at people. And it was not a very positive culture that he created in the factory. And this woman that had started with him, who handled my account the last 2 years, she left. And they all have English names. Her name was Shelley. And I said to her, she sent me an email, sorry, Roger, I'm leaving DIY and blah, blah, blah. And I said, look, I don't know why your reasons why you're leaving, but I really appreciate how you helped me with Veto Pro Pac tool bags. And I consider you a friend. I hope we stay in touch. 2 months later, she called me up. She said that she was at this other factory. It was Israeli owned and much more westernized. And she said, if you want to come on over, I'll give you an introduction. And I got on a plane, flew over, met these guys at this pub called One for the Road. It's a British pub for a lot of expatriates that live there. And these guys were great. There were 3 managers of the factory. And I left DIY factory and I've been with this new factory now for it's 12 years now. But they're awesome. They're great people to work with. And so it's just everything's just, Adrian, it was all just flying by the seat of my pants doing this. And this wasn't something for me to do. I want to make a tool bag business, make a lot of money. That was never the intention. The intention was to make very functional, high quality, durable tool bags. And that was, I like quality. I don't like cheap shit, just like holding something, a cheap tool. It just rubs me the wrong way. And so,
and that's how I got into, or how I found Veto Pro Pac, is I kept ripping bags. I ripped a couple of backpacks because I was into, the backpack tool bags. And I was like, I'm going to start looking around. I started seeing people post about the Veto, tool bags and backpacks in particular. And I went ahead and bought a couple, and, they've lasted me, and I bought more and more. And I feel like you guys have a bag or like a design for every scenario, every trade. And there's something you're bound to, like, if you just keep looking through the Veto lineup.
Did you see him on a job site, Adrian, or did you first see him? You saw him online, so you didn't see him in real life on a
No,
job
I think
site?
I saw them online. I saw some people using them, and they looked really nice because they stood up.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I got into them. And then I got my dad into them. He loved them. Started buying them for the guys too. We have a couple of guys. We're a small company, and they love them too. So we try to get all the ones with like the hard bottom base, because we work in kitchens and stuff. So we set them on the ground. That way they don't get wet. They don't fall over. and me on the roof, I'll hang
Yep.
it with the hook, all that stuff. That's great. I do have a question though. How did you come up with the name Veto Pro Pac?
Yeah, it's funny. A lot of people don't ask that. Some people do. They say, where did
Hmm.
Veto Pro Pac come from? And I was thinking about, well, you got to have a name for this. And I was first thinking of like, black bear bags or kind of testosterone loaded name.
Yeah.
And it was one very early Saturday morning when my head was clear, staring at the ceilings while still laying in bed. And thinking, what am I going to call this? And I just started thinking, well, it orients the tools vertically. It's a big
Okay.
deal. So that's vertical tool
Oh,
orientation,
I
vertical
see where you're
tool
going.
organization.
Got you.
They're protected and they're packed and they're ready to go to work. So I started saying, okay, Veto, vertical tool organization, Veto tool orientation, vertical tool orientation, and then it just came Veto Pro Pac. Which is called an acronym, where you
Yeah.
shorten it down. And in the newspaper, when you see, the Congress vetoes this bill or the president vetoes this bill, that I get a little extra marketing bump because everybody calls it my veto now. And so,
Gotcha.
and there was a little kind of quirky to it, and it
Yeah.
was almost like a little poetry, Veto Pro Pac, or a little kind of rhyming thing going on. So it was weird, quirky, and I just said, yeah, that works. Um, and that's really where it came from. And some guys say, who designed those? Your Uncle Vito? And I said, no, it's not VITO, it's VETO.
Yeah. No, that's actually really great because like when I when you hear Veto Pro Pac or when you see Veto, you don't forget that name. Like I really didn't forget that name, so it kind of stuck with me, and then like I started seeing it more and more. So like I said, I saw them online, and I actually like my supply house only had like the CLC tool bags for the longest time. I'm so happy that now
Really?
they really don't have any. They still have a little bit, but it's all Veto on the shelves. They have a bunch of like behind the counter. It's all Veto Pro Pac. I'm so happy to see that now because
Is it really
people,
now?
yeah, and it's really cool to see because like I said, they were really just carrying that one bag, and those are the ones that I had before. I didn't want to mention any names, but that's the one that I had before that kept ripping on me, and I had trouble with them. I tried like 3 or 4 different styles from them, and then I finally got like the Tech MC, the backpack, and the MB2, and I really love those bags.
Yeah.
So they've been great. Like you said, they stand up, they're vertical, and I've never seen a tool bag as far as like quality wise that's made like that, where it's like you can tell it'll last, you can throw it around. I have an old MB3 that I've beat up, it still works fine. They're built to last.
Yeah, that was the intention. Was we have a 5-year warranty, so it's like, okay,
Oh yeah.
these have to be able to stand up to real life day-to-day work. And as you know, I mean, those CLC bags that you bought, they didn't have a plastic bottom, right?
No, the I don't even think a lot of them stood up.
Yeah, yeah, because that was there were really no bags that had a plastic bottom until that company
No.
Plano came out. But that they never really got into the tool bags. They just had that one bag. But I thought it was brilliant that they put a plastic bottom. It was not very thick plastic, so the bottom was warped and it didn't return up on the sides. So if you still set it down in snow, like here in New England, the fabric would still get wet because it only returned up about 3/4 of an inch
Yeah,
on that
that's
too.
really cool. That's really cool that you
But
kind of did this all on your own for the longest time, and you saw it through. And it is what it is now, right? A lot of people know about Veto. Everybody gets excited. The people in the chat right now are mentioning, some of their favorites, and just saying how much they love Veto. I've actually had the opportunity, to talk to you at a trade show at AHR. I also talked to your design team.
Yep.
You have a design team now
Yep.
that y'all work with, and I've had a chance to talk to them, and they really care about the feedback. And I've been able to help them out a little bit and give them my feedback, my opinions, and they actually value those because they want to know the people in the trades, all these techs, how are they using them, how can they be better. And you guys are just pumping out all new designs and bags every year now.
Well, thank you, Adrian. And it's the various tradesmen. There's so many different trades, and there's trades that we're not even in yet. It's like I could do a welder's bag. With all the wind energy and these wind towers now that they're putting up, like wind technicians that have to service the wind turbines. We can do a wind turbine technician bag. I mean, it's endless.
Oh yeah.
What you can do on that too. So it's like reaching out to that are in the field that take their trade seriously and know what they're doing. We love that open door communication with you guys, understanding how you work, what you like, your ideas about things. Well, what about this or what about that? Generally it can take, depending on the size of the product, it could take 6 months to 2 years, maybe sometimes 3 years to develop a product, depending on what it is. And in that process of developing, you have the initial concept and drawings, and in the process of developing it changes over time. And feedback that we get from you guys in the field, of course, field, everybody's different. Everybody's works slightly different, and our challenge is to take that information and what makes sense and has the most universal appeal. And I'll never forget this guy. This is early on. I think I probably had just had the one tool bag. And this guy reached out. I can't remember if it was an email or phone call. And he said, he sent me a picture and he took all of his tools out and laid them on the kitchen table on a drop cloth. And he said, can you make a bag that each one of my tools would fit in one of these pockets? I said, you can't do that. I said, those are your tools. Somebody's got to have different tools than you have. We can't make a bag that fits each one of your individual tools on that. So it's that's our challenge, is to take information that we understand on our own, and also feedback from you guys, and then filter that, and then kind of what has the most universal appeal moving forward. But Adrian, it's like you get up in the morning, you go to work, and you have you and all the thousands of tradesmen around the world, and they go to work and whatever they're doing, and they have tools. And a mason is going to have 4-pound lump hammers, digging bars, trowels, all that stuff. That stuff doesn't really, that would store like in a tote, whereas the hand tools that you use are much more delicate than what a mason would use. So there are unique situations depending on what you do and how they work. And it's understanding those situations and how you need to store, carry, and access your tools to do what you do. And so that's really, kind of where we are at, is trying to figure that out and then make it so that your daily work routine, to be able to store your tools, carry your tools, or transport them and access them, is kind of the 3 pillars of designing the tool bag. And then I always kind of like 4. Number 1 is, what does this do? What's the purpose of this? And once we understand, saturate it with functionality. Number 2, I'm a stickler for quality. These bags are handmade. They're not made by robots. And the factory that we work with, they have very good capabilities of making quality soft goods. Number three, which comes under the category of quality, is that the materials, they're good quality materials, able to stand up to the abuse in the field, the daily abuse in the field. So they're good quality materials. And then number four is that the bags have a professional, rugged, timeless look to them. So that the bags, like for me, the Home Depot bags, I call them Home Cheapo bags. They're black
Yeah.
and red with white thread. And, it just does not look like a professional bag. It just looks like, a weekend warrior bag. And so it's basically those four things that I was doing intuitively that they wanted me to write in our catalog from last year to break it down. I broke it down those four things, but I was just doing it intuitively. I wasn't thinking, okay, there's these four.
Yeah.
That's really kind of
And
going into it to make it what it is.
and there's some guys in the chat right now that are asking it. They're waiting on the MB5B, which is that small backpack. A lot of people are excited for that one.
Yeah.
Do you know when that's coming out?
That is, I don't have an exact date on that. That might possibly be in either the fall or the spring.
Gotcha.
I checked with my team now that are designing a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
So they do these beautiful computer generated drawings, and so they can make it happen a lot quicker than I can now.
Yeah, I think I had asked them. I think they were trying to do like a late summer or maybe early fall. We'll see when that comes out. A lot of guys are waiting on those. Those were at the trade show, and I was pretty excited about those too.
Yeah, that's right. We had them there. Yeah, you saw them there on that.
Yeah, and then just there's
So
guys.
Adrian, let me ask you a question.
Yes.
Working out of various bags that you have, do you feel that you work more efficiently with the bags because of the way your tools are organized and easily accessed?
Yes, definitely. Like I said, I have an install bag, right? So that's for major projects, and it holds the most tools because it can hold like individual open-ended wrenches, bigger crescents, bigger. Uh, it's a lot of wrenches in that bag, right? A lot of tools that I can stand up, a lot of different screwdrivers, nut drivers, but I don't need that stuff every
Yep.
day. So then I have like an everyday bag that has more like multi tools, like an all-in-one screwdriver, my meter, more basic, and I can grab.
Would you call that a service bag?
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, everyday service bag. It's one that I grabbed, and I want it to be as light as possible, easy to carry, all that kind of stuff. So right now I have a few of them. I'm trying to put like I just like I have the TP double XL, the blackout, and now that you can swap out the panels, I got those bulk storage panels because I'm gonna throw like power tools in there. So, and those V swap panels are a game changer too.
Yeah. Yeah, those seem to be working out pretty well. We've had a lot of people that have been picking those up to kind of customize their bags based on how they need, what their needs are for how they work.
Yeah, those are great. Like I said, Veto, like you guys are all about quality, but you're very innovative. So once I started seeing those V swap panels, I was like, oh man, those are going to be great. So I've enjoyed them, taking stuff out so I can fit bigger tools in there. Like I said, I'm going to use one for some power tools. So I get on rooftops. That's all I work in is either rooftops or in tight kitchens. So I need the hard bottom base. I need it to be like on my body, either a backpack or some sort of sling bag.
Mm-hmm.
So those have been great for me, and I love the bags.
Adrian, how do you deal with the heat working on rooftops? You have like a shade or something, or like a sunshade you can put up?
Yeah, I've told you how bad it is down here in Texas. I do have an umbrella that I put out. I do have an umbrella that I put out, or I'll wear like one of those wide brim hats. I cover my neck.
Yeah.
I cover my arms. You know, I just try to be covered the whole time, and it makes a big difference because once that sun hits you, it'll drain you pretty quick.
Oh, it is. It's yeah, because you were getting temperatures like 115, 118. Yeah.
Yeah, like 115, 117. It was crazy.
Wow.
So
So you
before we
have like
had,
a little umbrella that you can set up and
yeah,
get a little bit of shade.
yeah, some guys use the whole like one of those canopy things to cover the whole unit so
Hmm.
they can work on it. But I don't know. I just take an
Yep.
umbrella and stick it up, and it works pretty well.
Hmm.
So before we head out, I don't want to keep you too long. I don't know if it's one story or several stories you have about guys, you know, that come out to your house to do work and they actually have Veto Pro Pac bags. Can you tell
Yeah.
us about that?
Yeah. I had, in fact, this was recently. It was probably about 2 months ago. I came back from the gym and I was in the kitchen and making my lunch, and which is pretty involved. I eat pretty healthy food. I love this salad. It takes me about a half an hour, but there's a lot of protein in there too: tuna fish, hard-boiled eggs, avocado, kidney beans or cannelloni beans. Very involved, but it's delicious. But anyway, my wife said that the gasket on the clothes washing machine wasn't sealing right. It needed to be replaced, and that appliance tech was coming over. And I said this morning. She said yes this morning. So about 10 minutes later, she said, "Oh, he just pulled in the driveway." So I said, "Okay." And then 5 minutes later, knock at the door. So I went to the front door and opened the door, and this guy was standing there, and he was probably about 5'6", a little short, kind of a shaved head with a beard.
Hmm.
And I put my hand out and said, "Hi, I'm Roger." And he said, "Hi, I'm John." And he had a bag. I didn't see what the bag was, but he switched it behind his back from his right hand to his left hand to put out his right hand to shake my hand.
Gotcha.
And it was not very friendly. He didn't have good people skills. He didn't even, he's looking at me like, "Who are you?" And so I brought him through the hallway, through the kitchen, around the island where I was making my lunch, and opened up the door to the laundry room. And as he's walking through there, he has the Tech Pack MC blackout. And he sets the bag down on the tile floor in the laundry room and opens it up and starts to open on his knees, opening up the door of the washing machine. There was a stackable unit, the dryer on top. And so I go back to making my lunch. And then I look over and look down, and I said to him, "Wow, that's a pretty cool looking tool bag." I said, "You can see all your hand tools. They're all standing up nice and vertically." And he goes, "Yep." He said, "That's why I like it." And then I go back to making my lunch. Oh, and then he said, "Yeah," well, he said, I have two of the other bags. I have a little meter bag and a little tool pouch. And a
Yeah.
couple of the other guys have. I go, "Oh, that's cool. It looks like a very cool tool bag." I go back to making my lunch. And then I said to him, "What's the name of the bag?" And he goes, "Veto Pro Pac." And I go, "That's a weird name." So he just like, "It is what it is." And he said, "Most guys just call it my Veto." So I said, "Okay." So I go back to making my lunch. And then I said to him, I said, "Oh, they say you got a plastic bottom on there." And he said, "Yeah." He said, "I like the plastic bottom because sometimes the floor is wet and I don't have to worry about the bag getting wet."
Hmm.
I went back to make my lunch. And then I said, "Well, it looks like the bottom is floating." And he said, "What do you mean?" "Well, it doesn't look like the bottom sitting on the plastic bottom sitting on the tile." And he looks down. "There's a recessed foot. You can't see the foot because the recess is in." So he picks it up to show me, and our logo is on the bottom. And so
Yeah.
I said, "Oh, the company logo is there too. It looks cool." He said, "Yeah, it's company logo." And then I look at it, I say, "Oh, it looks like there's something else there." And he's looking at me like, "What's this guy smoking?"
Yeah.
Why is he so interested in my tool bag? And he's giving me pretty weird looks. And then so I said, well, it looks like there's something else under there besides the company logo. And he looked really carefully, and he's going looking, and he goes, oh yeah, there's an anchor. And I held up my arm. I said, yeah, there's an anchor. You can't see it there. It's tattooed on my arm. I said,
Yeah.
yeah, it's an anchor just like on my arm here. And then he's looking at now he's really perplexed. He's looking at me and he's starting to get red. Like, and I said, yeah, it's a tool bag company that I started like that. And then he looks at me and he got all red, and because he was literally treating me like shit, like Mr.
Yeah.
Homeowner. And so it was like, okay, on that day. So when he was done, I said, come on out and, take a picture of you and me in front of your van there too. And then the other time was an oil burner guys, and they both came in the house, a hot water heater. And one of them brought in a plastic box and went down they got the water heater down the basement. The guy brought in his plastic box. And down in the basement, I have these steel racks, and there's a lot of early samples when I just started in the basement. And one of the other guys, he says, what are all these Veto Pro Pac tool bags doing down here? And I said, what's a tool bag business I started? He said, you started Veto Pro Pac? I said, yeah, I did. He said, are you kidding? I said, no. He said, I got your bags out in the truck. He said, and he ran out, he brought back in the Tech MCT. And he, reached out and shook me. He says, I love your bags. He said, I can't tell you how much I appreciate your bags, blah, blah, blah. So, a couple of sightings in the house. It's happened a couple other times too on that, but it's just, funny when, guys show up and
I can imagine, because they don't even know they're talking to, the creator and all that. So that's
no,
really
they
cool.
don't at all. A little bit of disbelief there.
Oh, that's awesome. I love hearing it. So I think we're going to wrap this one up. We've been here an hour and 45 minutes. I don't want to keep you too long, man. I know
Wow,
it's late over there.
That's awesome.
I know it's late over there. I don't want to keep you too late.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it for this and all too. And I just, heads up and much kudos to you guys that are out there in the heat taking care of this stuff every day. And, I don't have to do that now, but I remember I did. And so.
Hey, you were out there doing, a lot back in the day. And then you started, that's why I like the Veto lineup. Like I said, you were actually out there doing this stuff. So then, and you made these bags and you catered to everybody or different trades at that. There's electricians' bags, there's plumbers' bags, there's HVAC bags, carpentry bags. You guys are really doing great on the lineup. Do you know how many products you guys have right now?
I heard the other day it's getting close to with the panels and everything. It's like, I don't know, close to 200 products now or something like that. So
Dang.
it's taken on. I mean, it's just endless, and you can keep going too. So so it is. And I got a great design team now with Lee and Ian and Wesley now too. And they don't have construction experience. So there's a little bit of disconnect there, but they understand it and appreciate it on that too.
Yeah,
so
I've met those guys. I talked to them. They're really great. Like I said, they really care about what we think about the bags and how they can improve them and all that. So I love that aspect of it, the feedback and the tweaks that you guys do, fixing things here and there. So we appreciate you, Roger. We love the Veto Pro Pacs. Everybody in the chat, chimed in on their favorite bag. So we definitely appreciate you.
Well, thanks so much, Adrian, for the opportunity to tell this story on your podcast. Really appreciate it. And I have nieces that live out in Austin. And if I come out sometime, I'll drop down and see them, and we'll go out and have some barbecue.
Yeah, if you're ever in Texas, just let me know. I go up there every now and then. So if you're in the area, we can do something.
I will definitely. Yeah, I'll definitely do that, Adrian, because I was out there in April. My nieces live in Austin, and I could have easily. How far are you from Austin?
Well, from Austin, it's probably close to 6 hours, but we could do something. Can figure it out.
Yeah, we work something out.
All right, Roger.
So,
I appreciate you
awesome.
coming out. I'm gonna end the show. If you need to leave, you can. I have to stay till this whole thing ends. So appreciate everybody that came in. Thank you again, Roger, for coming through. Check out Veto Pro Pac. I think everybody already knows who you are. Love the bags, and I'll see you guys.
Thanks, Adrian.